Romain, an 18-year-old, heads to a drug dealer's house to score some drugs. Today's his birthday, and he needs them for his party later. After grabbing the drugs, he steps outside just as his dad calls. His dad, who's away on business, asks where he is. Romain lies, saying he's still home. His dad had warned him not to leave the house because they're keeping a lot of cash there, which could get stolen. Romain quickly hangs up, jumps into his dad's vintage car for the party, and lights a cigarette. But the cigarette slips and falls inside the car. He stops, tosses it out, and restarts the engine, only to spot a girl covered in bandages staggering in front of his car. She jumps into the passenger seat and starts crying. Romain asks who she is, but she doesn't answer. He insists on taking her to the hospital, but she hands him a walkie-talkie, trying to explain she can't speak. Over the device, voices report that subject C39, a woman aged 20 to 25 and about 5'10", has escaped from a lab. Panicked, Romain calls an emergency hotline and describes the situation. The operator tells him to contact the police, but Romain hangs up immediately. He's carrying drugs and fears getting arrested. Instead, he decides to drop her off himself. The girl grows more frantic and suddenly pulls out a tool from the car, stabbing herself until she bleeds heavily. She vomits blood on Romain's neck and shirt before passing out. Romain tries waking her but fails. Terrified, he flees to his garage, hiding in the car. Checking her again, he realizes she's dead. Now stuck with a body in the car, he freaks out. After washing the blood off, he blames himself. If only he hadn't stopped the car. His dad calls again, asking about the vintage car, his prized possession. Romain lies that everything's fine, then checks the garage. The car's clean, but the girl's body is gone. Confused, he searches for her, but his girlfriend Anaïs arrives early to spend time with him before his friends come. She tries kissing him, but Romain, still shaken, pulls away to keep looking. Annoyed, Anaïs goes to smoke by the pool. Romain calls her back, urging her to leave, just as things spiral further out of control. Anaïs had come to pick Romain up for the party, but his strange behavior makes her suspicious. He'd never acted like this before. Just then, his friends arrive and urge him to come to the party. Romain sends Anaïs off with them, promising he'll join later, and then heads inside to check the CCTV footage for the bandaged girl. Finding nothing, he arms the house alarm and leaves for the party. On the way, Romain feels off. His earlier drug use hits him hard, and the encounter with the girl leaves him acting oddly, obsessively drawn to bright lights. Every streetlight grabs his attention, confusing Anaïs, who can't figure out what's wrong with him. At the party, everyone questions Romain's bizarre behavior, but he ignores them and slips into a room. There, he notices his eyes look strange, glowing unnaturally. Anaïs walks in with her friend Julia, who doesn't realize Romain is there. The two came to the bathroom to use drugs, and Romain watches them secretly. Julia confesses she's pregnant and had slept with Romain. Anaïs, furious, storms out. Romain then hits on Julia, and as they get intimate, she notices his glowing eyes. He checks the mirror. His eyes are now eerily shiny. Julia comments on it, but Romain's dad calls, saying the house alarm was triggered and someone was spotted inside. Panicked, Romain flees the party, his nose bleeding, a sign his body is changing. Outside, Anaïs tries to kiss him, but Romain bites her lip, drawing blood. She pushes him away. When a friend tries to help, Romain beats him brutally, breaking his jaw. Julia intervenes, shocked by his behavior, but Romain bolts. He grabs a bike and rides home, still drawn to lights. Back at the house, his dad calls again, asking if everything's okay. Romain lies, and his dad laughs, a creepy, unsettling sound. Inside, Romain finds blood-stained patterns on the walls, leading him to the bathroom. There, the bandaged girl reappears, stabbing herself again before slitting her throat and handing him a device. She dies before he can help. As soldiers break into the house through a window, Romain's world spirals further into chaos. It's clear the soldiers came for the same girl now in Romain's bathroom, the one carrying the recorder labeling her as Subject C39. As they retrieve her, Romain hides, but the soldiers sense someone still in the house. Panicked, he flees, acting more unhinged than ever. The commanders capture him, shove him into a van, and shoot him dead. Meanwhile, Anaïs tries calling Romain, but the person answering acts like a stranger. Not knowing the truth, she spills everything. Later in a taxi, she starts feeling odd. Her neck twitches and she suddenly feels freezing, demanding the driver turn off the AC. By now, she realizes something's terribly wrong. She calls Julia, her best friend, ranting about Romain and Julia's betrayal. Julia brushes her off, saying now's not the time. She'd seen frantic, terrified people fleeing earlier, but has no idea why. Frustrated, Anaïs hangs up and notices she's being followed. The taxi driver confronts the pursuers but is shot. Anaïs bolts, stealing the taxi until she crashes and runs into the street. The commanders chase her, shooting, but miraculously she keeps running even after being hit. She stumbles into a club, screaming for someone to call the police and ambulance. The bartender dials 911 as Anaïs locks herself in the bathroom, crying over her bullet-riddled body. Shockingly, she's still alive and moving. When the lights flicker, she peeks out to see the attackers gunning down patrons. Slamming the door shut, she notices her eyes now glow like Romaine's. She's infected too. Desperate, she calls Julia again, who's waiting near a bridge with a scooter. Anais jumps from the club window and races to meet her. By now, she's mutated, behaving erratically, attacking a girl on the street, slashing her throat and smearing blood on herself. She even tries stealing a bike, shoving the owner into water when he resists. Drawn to bright lights, she screams as she flees. When she reaches Julia, they speed off on the scooter. Mid-ride, Julia's mom calls, urging her home due to the chaos in town. But Anais suddenly turns violent, splattering Julia with blood and trying to slash her throat. Julia shoves her off the scooter, but Anais keeps chasing her, matching the scooter's speed on foot, as if she's gained superhuman strength. Terrified, Julia races to her apartment, dashing straight to the elevator. Meanwhile, Anais smashes through a window and leaps into the building. Julia, trapped in a stalled elevator, when the lights cut out, hears Anais savagely attacking people outside. Anais moves like a rabid animal, leaving a trail of brutalized bodies. Julia frantically calls the elevator operator for help, but no one answers. When the lights flicker back, Julia hesitates to leave the elevator, fearing what's outside. Reaching her floor, she finds bloodied corpses, victims of Anais' rampage. Flashlight in hand, she calls for her mom, but she's nowhere to be found. A commander's voice echoes, offering to save her, if she's uninfected. Julia steps out and the commander ushers her into a room, only for Anais to burst in and attack. The commander kills Anais, but realizes she's now infected too. She explains that infected people's glowing eyes make them easy to spot, and reveals the infection spreads through blood and bodily fluids. The outbreak spiraled out of control because infected individuals wandered public spaces, turning the entire town into a nightmare. The commander warns Julia to hide in darkness. Light attracts the mutants. Before leaving, the commander shoots herself, fearing she'll turn into a monster. The infection traces back to Subject C-39, the bandaged girl whose experiments created superhuman mutants who lost their humanity. Romain, unaware of this, became Patient Zero after the girl vomited blood on him. His birthday party spread the infection to others, including Anais through a bitten lip, and Julia via intimacy with Romain. Julia, now infected but asymptomatic, feels her body fighting the mutation. But how long until she loses control? In the end, she too transforms into a feral creature hunting humans. The chaos stems from a failed government project to create superhumans. The bandaged girl, a half-zombie experiment, escaped after her vocal cords were cut to silence her. She infected Romain, triggering the town's collapse, and the movie ends with the nightmare far from over.